Hey Astrology fans, what's happening? Michael here, ready to talk to you about this upcoming conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. So any conjunction that happens between the slower moving planets is always going to be rarer just because they're slower moving. This one in particular is particularly notable because Jupiter and Neptune are the dual co-rulers of the sign of Pisces where this conjunction is taking place, and this is the first time that two of them have been conjunct in Pisces since 1856. So I'm going to talk about what that means, what it means for you, and all that good stuff. So let's get into it. So let's define the different actors in this conjunction. Jupiter, first of all, broadly speaking, Jupiter deals with benevolence, is the greater benefic is Jupiter, so almost always a positive influence. Benevolence, luck, judgment, obviously Jupiter being the king of the gods, Greek name was Zeus, to do with judgment and the kind of application of the law, as well as exaggeration. Anything that Jupiter touches in aspect is going to be magnified and is going to be exaggerated to some degree or another. Neptune, dealing with spirituality, mystery, illusion. Now, interestingly, illusion can be seen as a kind of dichotomy between creative illusion and destructive illusion, which will unfold a little bit later, as well as escape, and most typically the drive to escape from through a Neptunian set of eyes, the harsh realities of 3D life. Neptune likes things to be not so clearly defined and a bit wavier, like the sea. Pisces, the sign that's happening in, deals with is a sign of adaptability. It's a mutable water sign. It's a kind of empathic. Planets in Pisces tend to soak up emotions and vibes and so on like a sponge, really. And it's a sign of flowing back and forth through the veil. That would be the veil to the more ethereal realms of existence. So dealing with these two, the Pisces and Neptune, of course we're talking about a conjunction, but we also have to consider that Jupiter, you can consider Jupiter in a vacuum is transiting through Pisces, and Neptune is also transiting through Pisces. So Elliot describes Jupiter and Pisces as being like an opportunity to overcome limitations, and in particular it's a time to experiment with forgiveness, compassion and empathy. When describing the transit of Neptune through Pisces, so incidentally Neptune entered Pisces in 2012 and it will be there until 2025, so that's very much Neptune is an outer planet, so its transit through any given sign is going to take a lot longer. So these are more societal kind of trends rather than a more individual. Jupiter spends about a year in every sign, just for context. So she says, quote, "The dream of Neptune and Pisces is that the whole world is one. Nations will come together in peace and a cure is found for all the world's ills. But this transit has been characterized actually by a denial of inconvenient reality, increased xenophobia, and a culture that blames the disadvantaged for being a drain on society." Safe to say that Elliot Kent is not a huge fan of Neptune in Pisces. She's obviously focusing quite a lot here on the negative aspects that can come up with this transit, but I think that this is important to consider because quite often with Neptunian themes or Piscean themes, we can have kind of rose-tinted glasses in it. This is part of the siren song that Liz Green speaks of this tune that will lure sailors off and they'll end up shipwrecked. And I think that there's this kind of allure, this of magic and of dreams and so on, but we need to have a sense of balance between the other side of the veil and this side of the veil when it comes to Neptune and Pisces. Alright, so before we get on to specifically what this conjunction this year happens, I wanted to take a look, and I had a little look back at the last time this happened. So the last time that they were both conjunct in their domicile was on the 17th of March, specifically in 1856. So I had a look at what happened in March 1856. You're not going to believe it. They say that history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme. So the 30th of March, so that's 13 days, so just less than 2 weeks after these two were last conjunct in Pisces. What happened? There was the Treaty of Paris, which brought an end to a war in Crimea between the Russian Empire and the Ottomans, which is modern day Turkey, the British Empire, French Empire, and Sardinia, I think, which is essentially Italy. To quote Wikipedia, the treaty, signed on the 30th of March 1856 at the Congress of Paris, made the Black Sea neutral territory, closing it to all warships and prohibiting fortifications and the presence of armaments on its shores. The treaty diminished Russian influence in the region. Conditions for the return of Sevastopol, that's a city in Crimea, and other towns and cities in the south of Crimea to Russia were severe, since no naval or military arsenal could be established by Russia on the coast of the Black Sea. That is wild that we're getting the same transits in Pisces, and I'm not saying that Pisces has anything to do with war in Ukraine in particular, but isn't it absolutely wild that war is happening in the exact same place and a lot of the same actors in terms of nations are involved in a similar situation? Absolutely mind-blowing. So also in 1856, a little bit later, we had the Second Opium War began in China. So in many ways this war was just another imperialist war, just in a classic kind of sense, but I think it's important to note when we're talking about transits of Pisces, of its two co-rulers, is that the central issue was the trade of opium. So opium, as a obviously a very strong psychoactive drug, in many ways represents is a Piscean drug in many ways, because it brings up visions and it makes you see strange things, and it is a means of escape in many ways from the harsh realities of 3D life. So I thought that was interesting that was going on when these two were also conjunct in Pisces last time. Couple of births that happened around this time. So Sigmund Freud was born in May in 1856, just before Jupiter was leaving Pisces. So he had the two of them. They were a bit wide to really be strictly conjunct, but certainly he had Jupiter was also in Pisces as well as Neptune. It was just shortly after the conjunction, which I thought was interesting, given that his life work was basically in establishing the study of the depths of the human psyche as a serious science. So that, I mean, these things are as I said, the depths of the human psyche strongly relates to Neptune and to Pisces. Another birth around this time was Nikola Tesla. So he was born 2 months later in July 1856. So his Jupiter was in Aries. It had moved out of conjunction with Neptune, but I still think that it's interesting that he was gestating, so to speak, during the conjunction. And it's in particular interesting given that he seemed to be possessed with like an otherworldly genius. Tesla, he just stories you hear about, I think 8 languages he spoke, and he had he came up with really intricate plans for inventions in his head, and he was able to replicate them in the real world just from his head. I mean, that's just untold stuff. And also that he seemed to have lived on the line of what we could call madness, really. The story, I think that towards the end of it, well, first of all, he was very altruistic in that he didn't really seem to mind when people stole his inventions or made money off of his inventions. He was more interested in creating, first of all, and then also just kind of giving them as a gift to humanity in many ways. And that he died penniless, but he had a friend, there was a pigeon he knew, there was a friend of his, and he believed the pigeon had like laser vision or something like that. So he really was straddling this line of, as I say, what we can call madness, but what we'd now refer to more as mental illness, essentially. And these things all kind of combine to make Nikola Tesla a very strongly Piscean figure in many ways. So this is the chart of the exact conjunction. We can see here Jupiter and Neptune over here, both in Pisces, 23 degrees and 58 minutes. That's the exact conjunction. This is going to happen on the 12th of April. So that we're already in the orb, in that they're both in Pisces and Jupiter has been slowly approaching. So we're already in the influence, let's say, of this conjunction. But this will be the day when it's the most strongest. The most strongest? Anyway. So Jupiter continues. It actually leaves Pisces on 10th or 11th of May. We can see there, 10th it's right about to leave, so the week after, yep. So 17th of May, so again the 10th. Move that forward by 1 day. Yep, so on the 11th of May, it'll be out. But then it actually goes retrograde and it re-enters Pisces on the 28th of October. As we can see here, 28th of October, and Jupiter is retrograde now, and it is moving back into Pisces. It moves closer towards Neptune, but they never actually get fully exactly conjunct again. But then it obviously goes station, and it re-enters Aries on the 21st of December. As we can see here, this is the 23rd, and it is already in Aries. So essentially what we're talking about with this exact conjunction is, and the impact and so on, the influence that we'll feel is essentially from today, or from, you know, going back a couple of weeks certainly, until basically the end of the year. So this really is a time of heightened receptivity toward intuition, dreams, romanticism, those kind of rose-tinted glasses that I mentioned earlier. Idealism as well comes under the same thing, and in a broad sense, connecting with the other side of the veil. Something else here that I think is important to note is you can see here at 23 degrees 58 minutes, it is making a really almost exact sextile over here to the north node at 24 and 9 minutes, so it's just like 10 minutes away in terms of degree. It's really close, and of course that means that it's making a similarly tight trine down here to the south node. So the fact that this conjunction is happening, this really important conjunction is happening while making these aspects to the nodal axis, marks this even further as an especially potent opportunity to usher in some soul development. Really, the nodal axis has to do with lessons in life, which teach us to find a balance between two opposites, which obviously is what an axis is, and of course that includes the nodal axis. So I think it's really up to each of us to decide the extent to which we want to dive into these Piscean waters. So maybe you're a psychic, and all this Piscean stuff is very much your jam, and you're thinking, let's do it. Maybe you've been practicing and trying to break through an astral projection, something like that. Maybe this could be the boost that you need. Maybe you'll find it just suddenly clicks and it just happens. Maybe you're a creative, a writer, or an artist, whatever it is. Maybe you've been lacking a bit of inspiration recently, and then suddenly it arrives out of nowhere. Three different sound effects there. We had and we had so they were great stuff. Great YouTube content. So perhaps all this is right up your alley, but perhaps this is more of a mundane time for you in your life, and maybe these energies are not ones that you're going to find particularly helpful at this point in your life. For example, if you're moving house, or if you're starting a new job, in both of those cases you're going to want like a more grounded approach to life. For example, if you're signing paperwork and things, you want to be grounded and focused on the here and now when you're doing stuff like that, because that stuff's important. And in that case, if you're more earthy like me, or if you're in a time in your life when earthy energies are going to be more helpful to you, then you can work out the balance in appropriate amounts of using appropriate amounts of grounding practices, such as, for example, connecting with nature, walking around barefoot in grass, or if you live by the sea, on the sand or something like that, being more in contact with a sense of touch more generally, things like getting a massage, maybe giving a massage, even just like more generally being more mindful of the five senses. Things like mindful eating, this is a good time to practice that. If you're like me, you just eat it as fast as possible, but this could be a good time to really consider the smells and the texture and the flavors and so on of what you're eating, to really help yourself be more rooted in this world rather than the other one, which Neptune and Jupiter are trying to highlight for us right now. But as always with these deep Piscean waters, especially with Neptune and especially with Jupiter being involved there's always a danger of going out too far from the shore, or maybe that your ship gets caught in a storm and you get shipwrecked. That's my solid gold analogy for you there. So just like I'm just saying, just be wary. Presuming, as I say, that this isn't what you're after, I'm presuming that you don't know what you're doing. Professional Piscean mermaids, I'm sure, will do just fine. But those of us that are more land lovers may want to be wary of being excessively getting involved in escapism, of substance use, which is, I think, is in Piscean and Neptune terms is certainly linked to escapism as well, and also idealism, which again is linked to escapism. Just be wary of those tendencies. Of course, if you have anything at 23 degrees in your chart of course specifically of Pisces, but of any other sign as well, anything around about 23, 22, 24, thereabouts, it'll be making a tight aspect to this conjunction. So you'll feel it. If you have placements at 23 degrees thereabouts, you'll feel it in relation to those placements. But of course, we're all going to feel this, and we're going to feel this most strongly in the house of our chart, which contains the 23rd degree of Pisces, which is where this conjunction is going to take place. So if you want to work with this transit, you can gear work towards that part of your life and I think that you'll see a lot of results. It's a powerful thing. It only happens once every 170 years, I think, if my maths are right, that these two are conjunct both in their domicile of Pisces like this. So it's quite a big opportunity if you want to work with it. Both of these planets, and certainly the sign of Pisces, are related to magical practices. So this could be a good couple of weeks to plan and perform some rituals, as the veil will be predictably thinner, either with information coming in, such as dealing with your intuition, divination, something like that, with your tarot, with runes or dice or whatever you use, or going out, things like creative imagination, which basically is what magic is, right? So that's with art, or if it's with some kind of manifestation practice. Just the energy is there if you want to use it. All right, well, that's pretty much my thoughts on this conjunction between Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces. If you are watching this video before the exact date, which is the 12th of April, I'd love to know in the comments how you're planning to work with it, what kind of steps you're looking to do to work with this conjunction. If you're watching it after the 12th, I'd be interested to hear how it came up for you and how you used it. And also, if you're watching 2 weeks after, I know it's a long shot, but it would really be nice, wouldn't it, if history did rhyme a little bit stronger and we got some peace in Ukraine, just like happened the last time these planets were conjunct. Bit of a long shot, but I think we're all hoping for that. That's it. Please like and subscribe if you thought this was good. And yeah, thanks for watching.